about that feeling. Want to take the journey with me. We'll turn this floor up into the ceiling. Oh, don't let it go to waste. Can you feel it in your face? I don't need to know you. Yeah, come through with your best self. No, I'm no doctor, but I got this product. I know it's good for your health. I can't help myself. I can't help myself. No, I got to have you. No, I can't help myself.
Hey, no, I can't help myself.
No, I got to have you. Yeah. Oh, in another galaxy.
Welcome to the Help Myself podcast. Listen, I'm your host, John M. Singletary, Senior. I got to put that senior in there because I got my junior, aka LJ. That's my co-pilot, not only in this podcasting game, but in this amazing adventure that we call life. And listen, I'm excited to be back on the mic with all of you. Full transparency, I got going on this episode. I got to recording, and I was talking some good stuff. And I looked down and I noticed that I hadn't set up my mic. So the whole episode was recording from the MacBook microphone, and that was going to be some awful sound that I wouldn't have been able to edit up or fix. So I made the proper executive decision, and that is to delete that, throw it in the trash, and to start recording again. So here we are back with another episode of the Help Myself podcast. I'm excited to be back in the booth. Want to talk about something special, something sentimental, but I do want to state that I've been really wanting to have a conversation about some of the things that we need to be doing in this chaotic and destructive political climate. And, as I was saying in my first recording, there are some people that don't feel like it's so chaotic. There are some people that actually like what's going on. So obviously my words aren't for you. I stand on that. I want to be really clear on where I stand on this constitutional crisis, this chaotic historical. We are on the wrong side of history politically now, as we descend daily deeper into fascism and oligarchy, and one of the largest transfers of wealth from the working class to the ultra rich. And, there will be a time in the future where historically this era will be defined and taught as a crisis, as a time when there was so much unspeakable yet preventable and often unnecessary suffering, greed, and things of that nature. And so not just words to encourage, but what can we do during this time? And so there are three things that I really want to highlight. And again, I'll talk more in depth on this in a later episode, but I think this is as good a time as any just to kind of touch over them. One, we've got to make sure that we're continuing to pass information and education. You'd be surprised how many people do not realize that things that are being done are illegal. They're not aware of the historical context of things. And that's why, they want to ban certain books from libraries and from organizations. That's why, websites are being cleaned and scrubbed. And these things, they have to, we need to continue to pass this knowledge. As you can see behind me, I'm continuously building up my library. I have goals. One of my weaknesses is I'm quick to give away books. I have a whole bookcase at work full of my own personal books that will be pulled back into my personal collection as I grow um, my bookcases here. But I made it a goal to been supporting Mahogany Books, and they're not a sponsor or anything, but I do want to encourage you to support locally owned bookstores, to support Black and brown owned bookstores, women owned bookstores. Make sure, and obviously, if you are supporting these bookstores, you're supporting authors that are from marginalized communities. And that's very important to have the dissenting voice, because we understand how whitewashed our history often is. And the idea that the winner gets to tell the story, uh, which is so unfair. It's a propagandistic way of telling history. And so we've got to remain vigilant on the knowledge. Two, we've got to get back to community. I believe that we're in a specifically perilous time with that, because of coming out of COVID, we had really learned how to design our lives around being isolated from each other, and finding secondary ways to get in contact. And it's still good to use your Zoom and your Teams and your FaceTime, and going IG Live and Facebook Live, and just using all of those tools. But we've got to get back to real, organic, authentic community check-ins. I like to call it a potluck style community, where we're breaking bread, sharing thoughts, spending shared time, where we're able to get a more accurate gauge of the temperature and the climate that is going on within each of our communities, and being able to understand where there are problems and issues, and getting back to that mentality that it's not a, well, y'all struggling over there, but we good over here. But back to if there is someone in our community that is struggling, then we are struggling as a community, and we will not be whole until this member of our community has been also made whole. And so we've got to get back to community, and I still want to encourage us to be politically active. I think a lot of times we think politically active and we think of national, federal elections, but there's so much more to politics. I say it all the time, and I think so many other people say it. Well, you can say you don't do politics, but no matter how you feel about politics, politics will do you. And there's so much that is embedded in our political process, and there's so many daily processes that we engage in that we don't realize are political processes. And they may seem simple, but it is part of politics. And there is a social contract that we've got to remember, that we've agreed to be governed by elected officials. And granted, understand the staging and the political power and all the gamesmanship, but there is still a difference you can make. We're seeing in local politics, in cities and even states, where you have political bodies and political entities that are making huge differences. And not just on that, but again, how politics and the social contract, I think about the idea of all of this privatization, and they say, oh, we're going to get government out of that. But there are things, as such a heavily taxed populace, that our government owes us, that we should have. And it's amazing to think how we sell it like the United States just is the best and the greatest. And then you go into other places and you see the things that they have, the infrastructure and public transportation and healthcare and all that make us look like we're as far back as we really are. Let me not say it look like it. Shines the light on the fact that because of corporate greed and the greed of people in power, that the populace of the United States is getting less than we deserve, especially in comparison to the heavy air quotes so-called modernized and wealthy nations. And there are so many important metrics where we are dead last. It doesn't have to be that way. And so we have to remain um, that political apathy. We are seeing the results of it, but it has played out over time. And we have to be, look, you don't have to really care about who your national politicians are, but there are lots of things that happen locally that we should always be concerned about. And, I always try to open it up and say, you know what, I'm not going to be before you long, but you know what? I got some stuff to say. This is an important time of the year, man. So I want to get with it and, really talk about it. So let's move into the next segment. And I'm going to really break this thing out into some segments right now. We just going with introduction, the body, and closing out final thoughts. But today I want to talk about a life that still speaks. And this is an important conversation for me to have right now because this is scheduled to drop Monday, August 11th. Depending on the editing and all of the processes, it'll drop sometime on Monday, maybe very early on Tuesday. But Wednesday, August 13th is the late Martika Singletary's birthday, and she would have been 54 August 13th. And so this is a special day. We definitely always take time to honor her, to share her memory, to make sure that we keep her memory alive. And, that's hilarious to say. She had such an impact and continues to have such an impact that it is not even a question of whether or not we keep her memory alive. She is with us. She sustains us. She is our ancestor and guides us. Her love still remains very tangible in our lives. And the grief that we feel is the love that we have for her that we're still figuring out how to express. And so such a blessing in itself. And so, obviously this topic, a life that still speaks, is one that's been sitting heavy on my heart, but I think it has the power to change how we live. When we talk about this thing, how a life, even after it's gone, it can still speak. And there's a verse in the Bible that speaks to that. It's been echoing in my mind. And, it says that even though he's no longer alive, his faith or his life still yet speaks. It's been echoing in my mind lately. I've written about it and I've shared it because that's just something I can't help but think about when it comes to the life of Martika Singletary. And it's a reminder that we can do in this life, what we do in this life can actually continue to make an impact long after we've gone. It's all about how you decide to take your life, take the pieces or the totality of what's been given to you and to respond with purpose, to take what you've been given and to use it for something good. And I thought I was really good on loss. I thought I understand it because, I dealt with a lot of loss early. I experienced a close friend of mine being murdered at the age of 8. So, growing up in the neighborhood I grew up in, loss was definitely something that definitely came knocking. I lost friends to gang violence. In my military years, I lost brothers in combat. I lost comrades, multiple. And then in 2014, I buried my grandmother, who was my last living grandparent. And she was the woman that raised me and shaped so much of who I am. So, up to that point, I really thought I knew the drill until life just really showed me that I didn't know everything that I thought I knew. So, when we talk about the story of Martika, I met Martika back in 2000 through one of our mutual friends. And when I tell you, he was like, hey, you got to meet Martika, you got to meet her. And, I was like, okay, okay. And he just, he had all of these stories about, at the time, he was a recruiter out in Ohio. She was a recruiter out in North Carolina, and he had to go out and train a recruiter. And she met them for lunch because she was a recruiter in that same zone. And he just went on and on and on. So, I met her the first time. We were in uniform and everything. And I'm gonna be real. Sometimes some of the military uniforms aren't that flattering. So I met her and I was like, yeah, she cool, bet. And he's like, so what'd you think? And I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. But second time I met her, she had on gym clothes. Tell you, game changer. I felt completely different about Martika. Let's just say after that second meeting, I understood what the fuss was. I understood. Yeah. And one of the beautiful things about it is when me and Tika started dating, I was nothing but potential. At the time I was driving a raggedy little truck, 1984 Ford Ranger, man. It was a blessing. Don't get me wrong. Now I appreciated that truck. But I wasn't styling or nothing. I was living with my frat brother, I had a roommate. I was still figuring out who I was, early 20s. But Tika saw more in me than I saw myself, man. She really inspired me, and I started to level up, man. While we was dating, got my first ever brand new off the lot car, got my own place. I was already in the military, but I started making moves in my career. I made some decisions. It was during the time that we were dating that I made the decision to come into recruiting, which was probably one of the best career moves I ever made. There were times when I wouldn't have agreed to that, but looking at the totality of my career and where it ended up, one of the best moves that I ever made. And so, when we got together, I was still so full of promise, and she believed in me, and we built a life together. Bought our first home together. We had our dream cars. When I got my first Escalade, man, she had a Jaguar. That baby was baby blue, man. And then she traded that in, got her a Mercedes, and not to be on any not to be on all of the things, but it was just we were young and we were making things happen. We started a couple of businesses together. We were traveling, got real active with big brothers and sisters, but most importantly, man, she gave me our son, LJ. She wasn't even sure she wanted to have kids, man. So, I had to put on my best recruiting job ever. But I think LJ is the best thing that ever happened to both of us. And we weren't perfect. Pride and stubbornness pulled us apart. Let me tell you something, divorce is hard. And it changed me. We found ourselves, one of the things that I always say, and it's one of my regrets, obviously, yeah, you're not supposed to live with regrets and those things, but it is one of my regrets that, we didn't there's no, oh my God, you did this, that, and the other to point to the falling apart of our marriage. Things got difficult the way they do in life, when you're talking about finances, you're talking about the family things going on. And instead of fighting with each other, we fought against each other. And so pride and stubbornness pulled us apart. And that changed me. But I'm so proud that we found our way back to friendship, not only for our sake, but for LJ's sake. And, we were building on that friendship, and there was a lot more that could have come from our friendship if we had more time. But in early 2018, so late 2017, Tika was complaining of back pain. She was preparing to get ready for a new season of Black Girls Run. So she was just trying to gear up for a quick 5K. And, I think it was her plan that I think at least she was going to do a 10K, but I think she was going to try and do a half that year. But she was just having a lot of back pain. And when she finally went to the doctor, she was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. So she's diagnosed early 2018. I mean, early in January. And, we were praying and believing for a miracle, but it was stage 4. So, we were really behind the power curve to begin with it. And, we were praying and believing for that miracle. And in a way, we got one, but it definitely wasn't the miracle that we asked for. Things went a different way. She passed March 1st, 2018, but the reality is that her life was the miracle. And the life that she lived amongst us and with us was the miracle. The people she inspired, the lives she touched, the good that she brought in this world. And in that moment, and even in this moment, I understood, that her life still speaks. And, when you talk about fault and responsibility, it's not our fault that she's gone. It's not her fault. It's not my fault. It's not LJ's fault. He lost his mother at the age of 12. I lost the love of my life, the woman that I married and had a child with. She was gone at the young, vibrant age of 46. And so even though it's not our fault, it is my responsibility to honor her legacy, to raise our son with the same love, confidence, and drive that she poured into him. And her investment in us demands a return. So that's the challenge to me. That's the challenge to LJ. That's the challenge to all of us who have been made brilliantly better because of who she is. But my challenge to you is, in your own life, identify what's not your fault, and then own the responsibility for what happens next. Doesn't matter whether it's pain, loss, unexpected challenge, you can still decide to be a vessel for goodness, to be a testimony of resilience, to be a person of purpose. Life will throw some things at you that you don't choose, but you can still choose how you respond. Sometimes the way you live, that'll be the thing that'll keep speaking, even long after you are gone. Listen, I want to thank y'all for letting me share this today. I want to thank you because I know how y'all are. And so I want to thank you for your birthday wishes for Tika and sharing with us. Like, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to share her with you because of how she impacted our lives. It's beautiful. I have a wall. I have pictures of her and LJ and me and, up there. And it's just so inspirational to see her smiling at us and to feel her spirit in our home. So again, man, I want to thank y'all for letting me share this with you today. I'm not going to prolong it. Obviously emotional things, but until next time, I really want to encourage you to walk in your purpose, be tremendously blessed, and live your life as if you know that it's going to continue to speak even after your journey here is done, because it absolutely will. And so, how we do at the Help Myself podcast, we gotta close it out. So we want to take this time to say happy birthday, Tika. We love you. All my people out there, you know how we feel about you. We love you too. And We want to encourage you. Because listen, I can't help myself. Got to encourage, got to inspire, got to empower, but I can't help myself by being the absolute best version of myself. And you can too. So why not we do it together?
I can't